Poor cleaner invited to rich party to be humiliated, but they didn't know her millionaire father was among the guests. Comment and rate my story from 0 to 10. Your opinion is very important, and subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The mop glided across the mansion's white marble floor, leaving a gleaming trail that reflected the crystal chandeliers overhead. The 30-year-old cleaning lady moved with mechanical precision, her thin arms pushing the cleaning tool across every inch of the luxurious space. Her calloused hands gripped the worn wooden handle tightly, while small beads of sweat trickled down her brow, furrowed in concentration. The navy blue uniform she wore had lost its original color in several places, especially at the knees and elbows, where the fabric was thinnest from constant use. Her brown hair was pulled back in a simple bun, with a few stray strands escaping and sticking to her damp neck. The woman paused for a moment to wipe her face with the back of her hand, letting out a silent sigh. It was just another ordinary workday at the most imposing residence in town, a 3-story construction surrounded by perfectly manicured lawns and a water fountain in the center of the courtyard. The cleaning lady knew every room in that house, every antique piece of furniture, and every artwork hanging on the walls. She had worked there for almost 2 years, always arriving before dawn and leaving only when the sun began to set. The sound of high heels echoed through the marble hallway, making her look up. The lady of the house approached with elegant steps, wearing a silk outfit that cost more than the cleaning lady earned in 6 months. The wealthy woman stopped a few feet away, observing the work with critical eyes. "You'll need to work late tonight," the lady of the house said in a firm voice. "We're hosting a gala tonight, and the house needs to be spotless." The cleaning lady nodded, already accustomed to the extra demands that always arose without prior notice. She knew that this would mean arriving home even later, when her young 4-year-old daughter would already be asleep. The girl was looked after by an elderly neighbor during her mother's long workdays. "There's one more thing," continued the lady of the house, with a peculiar smile on her lips. "We want you to attend the party as our special guest." The words sounded so unexpected that the cleaning lady almost let the mop slip from her hands. Her eyes widened, trying to process what she had just heard. She had never been treated as anything more than an employee in that house, always remaining invisible while taking care of the cleaning and organization. I don't understand, ma'am," she murmured with a hesitant voice. "It's simple. You work so hard to keep our house beautiful that you deserve to see how it looks when we receive our most important friends. Consider it as recognition for your effort." The explanation sounded strange, but the cleaning lady didn't dare question it. Maybe this was a unique opportunity to experience, even if only for a few hours, a world completely different from her own. The lady of the house handed her an elegant card with golden details. "The party starts at 8 o'clock. You can go home early today to prepare." Upon arriving at her small house in the suburbs, the cleaning lady still tried to believe what had happened. The place where she lived contrasted drastically with the mansion where she worked. The walls needed painting, the roof had some loose shingles, and the small yard was covered by uneven grass. But it was her home, earned with much effort and dedication. Her 4-year-old daughter ran to meet her as soon as she opened the door, wrapping her legs in a warm hug. The girl was too thin for her age, a reflection of the financial difficulties they faced daily. Her big, expressive eyes shone with joy at seeing her mother arrive earlier than usual. "Mommy, the lady next door baked a cake and gave me a piece," the child said enthusiastically. The cleaning lady smiled, mentally thanking the kind neighbor who always helped take care of her daughter. She knew that the elderly woman also faced difficulties, but never failed to offer support when needed. Upon opening her simple wardrobe, the reality of the situation began to weigh on her shoulders. She possessed only one dress suitable for a special occasion, a simple black piece that she had bought on sale years ago. The fabric was well preserved, but definitely didn't compare to the clothes she saw her employers wear. She spent over an hour getting ready, trying to make her hair look as good as possible without having access to expensive beauty products. She applied a discreet lipstick that she kept for rare occasions and put on her only high heels, which pinched a little but were the most elegant she owned. Before leaving, she kissed her daughter's forehead and left her in the care of the neighbor, promising to be back soon. The journey to the mansion was made by bus, a trip that lasted almost an hour due to the distance between the neighborhoods. As she approached the main entrance of the house, the cleaning lady felt her stomach clench with nervousness. Luxurious cars were parked in organized rows, models that she only knew from magazines or television shows. Men wearing impeccable tuxedos and women adorned with glittering jewelry walked towards the main entrance. For a moment she hesitated. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe she shouldn't be there. But the memory of the invitation and the words of the lady of the house encouraged her to continue. She took a deep breath and headed towards the door, trying to ignore the curious glances she began to receive from other guests. The main hall had been transformed into a dazzling setting. Exotic flowers decorated every corner, golden lights created a magical atmosphere, and an orchestra of musicians played soft melodies in a corner of the room. The cleaning lady had never seen so much opulence gathered in one place. As soon as she entered, she was greeted by the lady of the house, who greeted her effusively in front of other guests. The wealthy woman's smile seemed genuine, but there was something in her eyes that the cleaning lady couldn't decipher completely. "This is our special guest," announced the hostess to a group of elegantly dressed socialites. "A very special person who works with us." The women approached with cordial smiles, asking questions about her life and work. Initially, the cleaning lady felt welcomed by the attention, answering honestly about her daily experiences. She didn't notice the glances exchanged between the socialites, nor did she realize that some of them kept their phones discreetly positioned in her direction. In the corner of the hall, a 30-year-old businessman watched the whole scene with growing discomfort. Tall, athletic, and wearing a perfectly fitted tuxedo, he possessed the type of beauty that drew attention wherever he went. His dark hair was slicked back, revealing striking features and piercing eyes that now focused on the simple woman surrounded by the socialites. Something about that face seemed familiar, an uncomfortable feeling that he couldn't explain. The more he watched, the stronger the impression became that he had seen that woman before, in circumstances that his mind refused to remember clearly. The situation took an unexpected turn when the hostess approached the cleaning lady again, this time carrying a tray with crystal glasses. "How about helping us serve the guests? I'm sure you feel more comfortable doing something useful," she suggested with a smile that now seemed clearly malicious. Embarrassment washed over the cleaning lady as she realized that she was being turned into a servant during the very party to which she had been invited. The discreet laughter around her confirmed her worst suspicions about the true intentions behind the invitation. The tray trembled slightly in her hands as the cleaning lady circulated among the guests, offering the crystal glasses filled with golden champagne. Every step she took across the hall seemed to echo like a hammer beating against her dignity. The whispers around her became more audible, cruel words disguised as casual comments among the wealthy present. "Look how she holds the tray," murmured a platinum-haired socialite to her companion. "Clearly she doesn't have the upbringing to be here." "It's almost comical to see her trying to fit in," replied the other, raising her glass while observing with disdain. "That dress must be from the last decade." The cleaning lady pretended not to hear, maintaining a forced smile while continuing her humiliating task. Her feet began to ache inside the tight shoes, but she resisted the urge to show any discomfort. With each passing moment, she understood better that she had fallen into a carefully planned trap. The millionaire businessman continued to watch the scene from afar, his expression becoming increasingly somber. Something deep in his chest twisted at witnessing such gratuitous cruelty. His considerable fortune, built through smart investments and successful businesses, had never been used to humiliate the less fortunate. On the contrary, he had always prided himself on treating everyone with respect, regardless of their social standing. A fragmented memory flashed through his mind like lightning. A small child, very small, playing in a garden. But the image disappeared as quickly as it had appeared, leaving him even more disturbed. The situation became even more embarrassing when the hostess announced that dinner would be served. A long table was arranged in the center of the hall, decorated with lush floral arrangements and silverware that gleamed under the light of the chandeliers. The guests settled into upholstered chairs, while the cleaning lady remained standing, unsure about where she should position herself. "Come, sit here with us," said the lady of the house with false gentleness, indicating an isolated chair at one end of the table. "You are our special guest, remember?" Upon sitting down, the cleaning lady was faced with an intimidating amount of utensils arranged next to her plate. Forks of different sizes, knives with varied blades, small and large spoons, all organized in an order that she didn't know at all. Her eyes scanned the set with growing anxiety. The other guests had already begun the meal with elegant and precise movements, each utensil being used at the exact moment and in the correct manner. The cleaning lady tried to imitate their gestures, but her trembling hands betrayed her inexperience. She picked up the wrong fork for the appetizer, causing looks of disapproval and muffled giggles. "Perhaps we should explain the basic rules of etiquette," suggested a burly man with a grey mustache, his voice filled with condescension. "We always start with the outermost utensils and work our way in." The laughter that followed was louder this time, echoing through the hall like a symphony of cruelty. Some guests discreetly raised their phones, capturing moments of the woman's confusion to share later in their exclusive social circles. The millionaire businessman could no longer bear the degrading spectacle. He stood up abruptly from his chair and walked to the end of the table where the cleaning lady was sitting. His firm steps drew the attention of everyone present, creating a tense silence in the room. "Allow me to accompany you outside for some fresh air," he said in a soft voice, extending his elegant hand towards the embarrassed woman. The cleaning lady looked at him distrustfully, her eyes reflecting years of humiliations and contempt. She saw in him just another rich man wanting to have fun at her expense, perhaps in an even more elaborate way. She recoiled instinctively, refusing the outstretched hand. "No, thank you," she replied in a firm voice, albeit trembling. "I can take care of myself." The rejection hit the businessman unexpectedly. There was something in the way she spoke, in the determination behind her broken voice, that awakened more confused memories in his mind. He returned to his place in silence, but continued to watch her every move with growing attention. The night dragged on like an endless torture. With each dish served, the cleaning lady faced new challenges with unfamiliar utensils, provoking more laughter and malicious comments. Her only motivation for staying there was the desperate need not to lose her job, constantly thinking of her young daughter who depended on her work to survive. When the party finally came to an end, it was past midnight. The cleaning lady helped to collect plates and glasses, automatically returning to her role as an employee. Her feet bled inside the tight shoes, and tears of humiliation burned her eyes, but she refused to let them flow. The businessman stayed until the end, watching her work even after the torture she had suffered. There was something deeply wrong with that situation, and he couldn't simply ignore it. Before leaving, he approached her again, this time keeping a respectful distance. "I'm sorry for what happened here tonight," he said with sincerity evident in his voice. "This wasn't fair to you." She stopped cleaning for a moment, raising her eyes to meet his. For an instant, she saw something different there, a genuine compassion that contrasted with the cruelty she had experienced throughout the night. But the distrust was too strong, built through years of disillusionment. "People like you always say that," she replied bitterly, "but they never do anything to change it." The words cut deep into the businessman's chest. She was right, and he knew it. All his fortune, all his successful investments, all his considerable wealth meant nothing if he wasn't able to use his resources to make a difference in the lives of those who really needed it. In the days following the humiliating party, the cleaning lady's life became even more difficult. Her employers began to treat her with even greater disdain, making constant references to the night they exposed her publicly. Malicious comments became routine, and extra tasks were added to her already heavy workload. "I hope you enjoyed your princess night," the lady of the house said with a cruel smile during a particularly difficult morning, "because that was the only time you'll be in this environment as anything more than a simple cleaning lady." The words hurt deeply, but the woman continued her work in silence. She knew that any reaction could cost her her job, and she couldn't afford to be unemployed. Her 4-year-old daughter depended completely on her income, and the bills were constantly piling up. During this torturous period, the millionaire businessman found himself tormented by memories that insisted on emerging fragmentarily. Confused dreams woke him in the early hours, always involving a small child that he couldn't clearly identify. The feeling that he knew the cleaning lady from somewhere in the past intensified with each day. Unable to bear the uncertainty any longer, he made a decision that would completely change the course of events. He discreetly hired a private investigator, an experienced and discreet man who specialized in uncovering well-kept secrets. His mission was simple: to discover everything about the life of that mysterious woman who so disturbed his thoughts. The investigation began methodically, revealing layers of suffering and struggle that the businessman had never imagined possible. The private investigator delivered his preliminary report after 2 weeks of intense work. The brown envelope contained photographs and documents that revealed a reality much harsher than the businessman had imagined. Sitting in his luxurious office, with a panoramic view of downtown, he opened the material with slightly trembling hands. The first photograph showed the small house in the suburbs where the cleaning lady lived with her daughter. The roof had visible leaks, the paint on the walls was peeling in several places, and the front gate hung unevenly due to rusty hinges. The contrast with his own luxurious penthouse made him swallow hard. "The woman works 16 hours a day," reported the investigator by phone, his professional voice carrying an unusual tone of compassion. "3 different cleaning jobs, including the mansion where you met her. The daughter stays with neighbors during all that time." The following photographs documented the cleaning lady's strenuous routine, leaving home before dawn, carrying buckets and cleaning supplies in torn plastic bags, working on her knees on the floors of commercial offices in the early morning, returning home only when the sun had already set, with her shoulders hunched over from extreme fatigue. "And the child?" asked the businessman, observing a photo of the girl playing alone in the small yard. "Very thin for her age. She looks like she's 2 years old, but she's actually 4. Chronic malnutrition, according to information from the school where she studies. The mother often skips meals to ensure that her daughter has something to eat." The businessman closed his eyes for a moment, feeling a weight grow in his chest. His own fortune had recently been multiplied through surefire investments in the stock market, generating profits that he couldn't even spend properly. The contrast with the reality of that family left him deeply disturbed. "Is there more information about her past?" he questioned, leafing through documents that contained fragmented official records. "This is the most interesting part of the investigation," replied the investigator with a dramatic pause. "She was abandoned as a baby at the municipal orphanage on the outskirts of town. No family records, no information about the parents. She grew up completely alone in the system." The businessman stopped breathing for a moment. Confused memories began to stir again in his mind, like pieces of a puzzle that insisted on rearranging themselves. The municipal orphanage on the outskirts of town. That name awakened something deep in his memory, a feeling of disturbing familiarity. During the following days, he found himself secretly observing the cleaning lady during her work in the mansion. Now knowing her story, each of her movements took on a different meaning. The determination with which she cleaned each surface, the dignity that she maintained despite the constant humiliations, the way her eyes shone slightly when someone treated her with a minimum of respect. Her routine became even more painful after the party. The employers had spread the story among their rich friends, turning it into a recurring joke in their social circles. Cruel comments reached her through maids from other houses where she worked, each word functioning as a new stab at her already fragile self-esteem. "I heard you were the main attraction at the mansion owner's party," said a co-worker with malice disguised as curiosity. "How elegant it must have been to serve champagne to the rich." The cleaning lady continued her work in silence, scrubbing the floor with unnecessary force to vent her frustration. She knew that responding would only worsen her situation, but each malicious comment accumulated like poison in her heart. The public humiliation had become a mark that would follow her for a long time. At home, her young daughter began to realize that something was wrong. The 4-year-old girl, despite her young age, possessed an acute sensitivity to capture her mother's emotions. During the nights, when she thought the child was sleeping, the cleaning lady cried silently, releasing all the pain accumulated during the day. "Mommy, why are you sad?" asked the girl one morning, her big, expressive eyes reflecting genuine concern. "I'm not sad, honey," lied the mother, hugging her daughter with desperate tenderness. "Mommy is just a little tired." But the child was not convinced. She began to draw colorful cards with messages of love written in her childish handwriting, leaving them scattered around the house to cheer up her mother. Simple gestures that touched the cleaning lady's heart deeply, reminding her of why she continued to fight daily. The businessman, in turn, found himself increasingly tormented by the memories that insisted on emerging. He decided to visit his family in search of answers, driving to his father's house on a Saturday afternoon. The rural property where he grew up was a stark contrast to the urban life he led, surrounded by acres of cultivated land and a main house built in colonial style. His father, a 60-year-old man with completely white hair and still imposing bearing, received him in the house's library. The shelves full of old books and family documents held decades of history, including secrets that the businessman was only beginning to discover. "I need you to tell me about the municipal orphanage on the outskirts of town," he said directly, observing how his father's face stiffened instantly. "Why this strange question?" replied the older man, averting his gaze to the books on the shelf. "Because I have the feeling that our family has some connection with that place. Confused memories that I can't organize properly." The silence that followed was heavy, laden with tension and unspoken secrets. The father walked nervously through the library, his trembling hands organizing and reorganizing objects unnecessarily. It was obvious that the question had touched on something he preferred to keep buried. "We made sporadic donations to various charities," he replied finally, his voice less firm than usual. "Nothing more than that." But the businessman knew his father well and knew when he was omitting important information. The agitation in his movements, the way he avoided direct eye contact, all indicated that there was much more to discover about that mysterious connection. That night, he decided to rummage through his own belongings in search of clues. In the attic of the penthouse where he lived, among dusty boxes of childhood objects, he found an album of old photographs that he hadn't seen in years. The yellowed pages contained records of family moments that had been lost in his adult memory. It was on page 15 that he found the photograph that would change everything. A faded image showed him at approximately 8 years old, sitting in a garden next to a crib, where a very small baby was sleeping. On the back of the photo, written in the handwriting of his deceased mother, was written only, "Taking care of little sister during the visit." His hands trembled as he held that physical evidence of a memory that had been deliberately erased from his consciousness. The baby in the photograph possessed features that he now clearly recognized. It was the cleaning lady, decades younger, sleeping placidly while he watched her with the protective gaze of an older brother. The revelation hit him like lightning. All the strange sensations, all the disturbing familiarity that he felt when looking at her finally made sense. She wasn't just a suffering woman who awakened his compassion. She was his sister, abandoned as a baby and lost from his life for reasons that he still needed to discover. With the photograph still trembling in his hands, he understood that his search for the truth was only beginning. There were family secrets buried for decades that needed to be unearthed, no matter how painful the process was. His sister had suffered a lifetime of poverty and humiliation while he grew up in abundance, and that injustice needed to be corrected at any cost. The confrontation with his father happened on a rainy Monday, 3 days after the discovery of the photograph. The businessman arrived at the rural property unannounced, carrying with him the evidence that would change everything. He found the 60-year-old man tending to his orchids in the greenhouse, a hobby that always calmed him in moments of tension. "I need honest answers this time," he said, extending the yellowed photograph, "and I no longer accept evasions or lies." The father's face paled upon seeing the image. His trembling hands almost dropped the watering can he was holding, and he needed to lean against the plant bench to maintain his balance. The silence stretched for long minutes, only broken by the sound of rain hitting the glass of the greenhouse. "Where did you find this?" he murmured finally, his voice laden with guilt and regret. "In the attic. But that doesn't matter now. What matters is that you tell me the truth about my sister." The word sister acted as a trigger, causing the older man to collapse into a nearby chair. His shoulders slumped under the weight of decades of kept secrets, and tears began to stream down his aged face. "She was the daughter of a relationship I had before I met your mother," he confessed in a broken voice. "The woman became pregnant, but I was young, cowardly, and wouldn't take responsibility. When your mother found out about the child, she demanded that I make a choice." The businessman felt his anger grow with each word. All his life had been built on a lie, while his sister grew up abandoned and in extreme poverty. "You abandoned her at the orphanage to maintain your marriage," he accused in a harsh voice. "Your mother was pregnant with you. She said she wouldn't raise another woman's child along with her own. I chose the family I was forming and abandoned the daughter who already existed." The confession shattered any respect that the businessman still held for his father. The cowardice of that man had condemned an innocent child to a life of unnecessary suffering. All this time, while he grew up surrounded by luxury and opportunities, his sister struggled daily just to survive. "She has a daughter," he said in a controlled voice, despite the fury he felt. "A 4-year-old girl who is starving because you were too cowardly to take responsibility." The father began to cry openly, his tears mixing regret and shame. But it was too late for tears. The damage had been done, and decades of suffering couldn't be erased with belated remorse. During the following weeks, the businessman increased his discreet surveillance of his sister. Through the private investigator, he followed every detail of her exhausting routine and the growing difficulties she faced. The situation deteriorated drastically when she lost one of her 3 jobs due to staff cuts. The loss of extra income meant that she had to make even more painful choices. She began to eat only 1 meal a day to ensure that her daughter had enough food. Her clothes, already worn, began to show visible patches, and she needed to sell her few valuables to pay basic bills. The worst moment came when the 4-year-old girl got sick. A high fever that persisted for days left her weak and disoriented, but the necessary medications cost more than the cleaning lady earned in a week. Desperate, she began to sell her last personal belongings, including a simple ring that had belonged to her adoptive mother in the orphanage. The businessman watched everything through the investigator's reports, feeling his heart break with each new piece of information. His considerable fortune, accumulated through smart investments in the financial market, seemed like a cruel joke in the face of his sister's suffering. His investments in stocks and investment funds generated daily profits that exceeded her annual income. The last straw came when the mansion owners decided to fire her unfairly. They falsely accused her of stealing an expensive jewel, using as a pretext a piece that had simply been misplaced and later found in another location. It was obvious that they wanted to get rid of her after the embarrassment of the party, but they needed a justification that didn't make them seem cruelly vindictive. "We can't keep a thief working in our house," declared the lady of the house with false indignation, knowing perfectly well that the accusation was unfounded. "Collect your belongings and leave immediately." The cleaning lady tried to defend herself, explaining that she would never steal anything, but her words fell on deaf ears. The humiliation of the unfair dismissal, combined with the loss of her main source of income, left her completely desperate. Without that job, she wouldn't be able to pay the rent on the small house or buy medicine for her sick daughter. That night, sitting on the floor of her simple room while her daughter slept with a fever, she cried as she had never cried before. All her life had been an endless sequence of hardships and humiliations, but now she felt that she had reached the limit of her endurance. She didn't know how to keep fighting anymore. It was at this moment of absolute despair that the businessman finally decided to act. He could no longer bear to watch his sister's suffering while he possessed more than enough resources to completely change her life. But he knew that he needed to approach the situation with extreme care. Considering how she had reacted negatively to his previous attempts at approaching her. The next morning, he appeared at the door of the small house in the suburbs. The cleaning lady answered with her eyes swollen from crying, wearing rumpled clothes and carrying her feverish daughter in her arms. The sight of that misery firsthand was even more impactful than all the photographs in the investigator's report. "What do you want?" she asked, with a tired voice, without the energy even to show hostility. "I came to return something that has always been yours," he replied softly, extending a document folder. "And to ask for forgiveness for an injustice that has lasted decades." She hesitated before accepting the folder, her distrust still present despite her exhaustion. When she opened the documents, she found certificates, contracts, and legal papers that she couldn't fully understand. "We're siblings," he said simply, watching her eyes widen in shock. "You're my half-sister, abandoned by our father when you were a baby. And I've come to correct that injustice." The words hit her like an earthquake. All her life she had questioned her origins, dreaming of a family that she never knew. The revelation that she had a brother, and that he was precisely that rich man who had been trying to help her, left her completely stunned. "The documents transfer to you half of the entire family inheritance," he continued, his voice laden with emotion. "Properties, investments, financial holdings, everything that should have been yours since birth." The folder contained the legal proof that she had just become one of the wealthiest women in the city. Decades of extreme poverty had ended in a matter of minutes, replaced by a fortune that would guarantee a comfortable life for her and her daughter for the rest of their lives. "Why?" was all she could murmur, her tears now being of relief and disbelief. "Because you have always been my sister, even when I didn't know it. And because every child deserves to grow up knowing their family and having the opportunities that were denied to you." For the first time in years, the cleaning lady smiled genuinely, not only because of the sudden change in her financial situation, but because of the discovery that she wasn't alone in the world. She had a brother who cared about her, a family that finally recognized her. The girl in her arms opened her feverish eyes and smiled at the strange man, as if she could feel that he brought hope and security to their lives. It was the beginning of a new story, where suffering would give way to joy, and where two people who had been separated unjustly could finally build the family ties that should have always existed. The businessman extended his arms, and for the first time his sister allowed him to hug her along with her niece. It was more than justice being done. It was a family being reunited after decades of forced separation. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel. I promise to bring you videos every day that will make your life happier. Comment what you thought of my story, giving it a rating from 0 to 10, and thank you very much.